how are we doing today, guys? I hope everyone is having a wonderful Wednesday so far. My name is McCry Stoolin, and here on Crafting with Crow, we work on a current project from Native Crow, Taxidermy and Oddities LLC, while I tell an interesting story of a topic that is on my mind. Here are a few places you could find me, like me, share me, and subscribe to my channel to keep up with new projects and posts weekly. Alright, so today we are going to be working on this project here. I have the plaque already painted, and what we're going to do is place these vertebrae on this board here and make them look like it is a shark swimming. But I'm going to do that over a bed of blue geode effect, so it looks like it's kind of swimming in the water. And today we're going to be talking about something that has been heavy on my mind. So I work or volunteer with the wildlife rehabilitation, and this year has been a very different year for these kinds of animals. We have been noticing and experiencing a lot of changes in the presentation of distemper. So today we're going to kind of talk about distemper, what it is, and I will also address some of the different things that we have been seeing in some of our animals this year. Alright, so what is distemper? Distemper is a fatal viral disease that primarily affects raccoons, foxes, coyotes, minks, and skunks. However, it can also be transmitted to our domestic animals, such as our dogs and our cats. So this infection is responsible for attacking the respiratory, gastrointestinal, and neurological nervous system in animals. Signs of infection typically start 10 to 14 days after the exposure, and that's kind of our first point that we're going to make with the changes in distemper this year. So the center that I volunteer with, we always, when we receive our new animals, they are always quarantined and kept separated from the other animals that we have for a minimum of 2 weeks. And as I had said, the longest day of symptoms after exposure is your 14-day mark. So anything beyond that, if no symptoms have presented, is generally in the clear. So the animals that we have been seeing this year, and the woman who I volunteer with primarily does skunks, but she has kept contact with many other rehabilitators who do other animals, and they have been reporting the same thing. So the lady that I volunteer with has stated that these animals, even with being kept quarantined and separated from others, have not been showing their symptoms until 8 to 10 weeks later. Not days, weeks, which is highly unusual. Distemper typically hits a lot sooner than that in any animals. So why are we seeing this year? Veterinarians have been asked, and nobody seems to have any answers. Another thing that we have been noticing with our animals too is not only are they showing their signs of distemper so delayed and getting sick from this viral disease, but they are also showing a change in their growth rate. a lot of the animals, including possums. And I say that the way that I do because possums are one of those animals that usually doesn't catch diseases or you don't have to worry about, because they are an animal that have such a low body temperature that a lot of these viruses can't survive in the possum's body. But even possums this year have been heavily affected by whatever is going around. And it seems like these animals, they're coming in as infants, orphaned infants, and they are only barely growing, if at all. A lot of the skunks that we worked with this year still fit in the palm of your hand as they are ready to be released. They are generally always released mid-September, sometimes the end of August, but it's usually around this time that these animals are released and they are of mature age, they're full grown and much larger than what we are seeing right now. So nobody has had any answers as to why that is happening. That seems to be a very new thing. Doesn't matter how much food you pump into this animal's body or what kind of resources it has, for some reason none of them are growing. And like I said, the distemper symptoms are coming way later. So because of that, these animals are, after being quarantined for the appropriate amount of time, they are then mixed with each other, and at that point, now an animal that does have distemper, that was not previously showing signs, is in an area where now it's infecting another animal. So that's another point that's been really awful this year, is like it's been really hard to keep them separated and to keep them from getting sick, because the distemper has been incredibly unpredictable this year. So distemper, it's awful. I'm just gonna say that. Early signs of distemper will include low energy in the animal. The animal will have an excessive amount of discharge around its eyes and its nose. It will have a fever, which, unless you take the wild animal to a wildlife vet, it's typically pretty hard to check wild animals for fever, just because you need special assistance for holding it for that. Most animals' temperatures are checked through the rectal thermometers. So imagine doing that, wrangling down a skunk and checking its temperature via rectal thermometer. Probably be getting sprayed a lot doing that. But it will experience a fever and coughing. And over time, as it progresses, the animal will also develop thickened skin around its feet and its nose. So, as this disease remains in the body, it will start to attack the animal's nervous system. And when you know this is happening, the animal will start walking in circles. It will be wobbly on its feet. And it will begin to present not being afraid of humans and its surroundings. So if you see a wild animal that should take off running from you, and instead it's walking towards you and it's maybe wobbly It just doesn't look right. Odds are this animal has distemper. Now, another symptom that will be presenting once the disease has attacked the animal's nervous system will be the animal will start to have really violent seizures. So, last year, I had a skunk that I had rescued, a wild skunk, and when I found it, at first I thought that it had passed away, but then I realized it was still alive, and I thought, well, maybe it's just severely dehydrated because it was in the middle of summer, super hot. This animal was in somebody's live trap and it had been sitting there all day. I had heard about it while I was at work, and I went to go check out the situation, and the skunk was still alive, but it was not moving. It was barely breathing. I offered it water and it immediately started drinking the water, so I was like, okay, maybe it's just severely dehydrated. I later realized that it was distemper, unfortunately. But while this animal was in my care, it did have a violent seizure, and it was really awful to witness it. What the skunk started doing, obviously it was like tensed up and shaking pretty aggressively, but it also shoved its front paw in its mouth and just started chomping. Like, you could hear the bones crunching and everything, and it was awful. I quickly grabbed a syringe and shoved it into its mouth to try to keep it from chomping down so much, but ultimately the skunk had to be euthanized because it was so far gone, and distemper is a very, very tough thing to bounce back from. So, how does distemper spread? The virus is spread through direct contact of an infected animal's urine, saliva, feces, or moisture particles spread through a cough or a sneeze of an animal. Distemper is very frequently fatal to animals. As I said, it is a very tough one to bounce back from. The survival rate of distemper varies from species to species as well. So in raccoons, it is documented anywhere between 50 and 90% fatality rates, depending on the strain and the age of the virus. In animals such as skunks and minks, the fatality rate is much higher. It is nearly 100% of the time that a skunk or a mink or an animal of such becomes infected with distemper. Odds are it's not going to survive it. Now, I work with the wildlife rehabilitation, and the woman that I work with primarily does skunks, and she has tried in every case to save the skunks. Every time they have come down with distemper, she will pour every bit of herself into that animal and try desperately to save it. Of course, if it's just not getting any better, she does not keep it in a stage of suffering. She will have it euthanized. But for years and years, she has always tried to save them. And there was one year, a few years ago, that she did end up with a distemper skunk, and after so much work and time invested in this animal, she was successful in saving its life. Only once has she ever treated a distemper skunk and had success healing it and giving it the chance to continue living. So recovery is always a long road, but very few skunks will find it, unfortunately. So, how do you treat distemper in an animal? Treatment for distemper includes high fluids being pushed into the system, usually through IV fluids. If you have access to that, that would be like in the veterinary care. If you're trying to do it just at home, you have to be forcing fluids into the animal's mouth very frequently. So you'd be forcing fluids and also doing a secondary infection treatment. And unfortunately, even if you act fast, like at the first signs or symptoms of distemper, even with acting fast, it is a hard battle to successfully treat. So catching distemper for any animal is truly a high risk and high threat. Thankfully though, thankfully for humans, distemper is not something that humans can catch. However, there is a virus or bacteria that is commonly vaccinated alongside distemper when doing your annual vaccinations with dogs, and that is called the leptovirus. The leptovirus is a threat to humans. Obviously, it's also a threat to your dogs, but treating your dog is also protecting yourself from this virus or bacterial infection is technically what it is. So leptovirus, let's learn a little bit about that too. Leptovirus, our wildlife carries, and they carry it in their urine, kind of like the distemper. Distemper is carried in their feces and saliva as well, but leptovirus is just a urine transmitted disease. And our wildlife, such as raccoons and skunks, foxes, coyotes, even our deer, are carriers of this disease. So as I said, it is something that spreads through infected urine, and people can get sick from this with very simple contact. So you could get infected with leptovirus if you were to get it on your hands by accident and without thinking about it, rub your eyes or your nose, and it could even be transmitted as simply as coming in contact with the infected urine. Again, you don't even have to really realize that it's happening. It doesn't have to be like a puddle of urine. It could be just a sprayed spot that you accidentally touch. If you have any open cuts on the surface of your skin, and this urine, what little amount it could be, gets into that cut, you can become infected. And leptovirus is a treatable thing. It's something obviously best treated at early signs and symptoms. but it's something that can become very dangerous if it goes untreated. So what are some of those early symptoms of leptovirus? Mild cases of it can present flu-like symptoms. So it could leave people thinking that they simply have just the flu and upset stomachs, the sniffles, fever, typical symptoms of a flu, and without thinking about the thought that, oh, I may have accidentally touched urine. It could be a situation where you do just chalk it up to be the flu, and at that point it would worsen and attack other parts of your body that do then become a risk. In more severe cases, as it rests in your body, it can then cause some serious organ damage. So a major organ that the leptovirus is actually responsible for attacking is the kidneys. When it comes to the kidneys, obviously, they are a very important part of the human body and the animal body. So there was a time, I remember when I was working at the veterinary clinic, that there was a sick dog that had come in. I believe it was a golden Labrador retriever. And this dog, we had run tests on and found that its kidneys were failing. And upon further test, we concluded that the dog was showing symptoms of leptovirus. And I remember it being such a big deal on how we cleaned its enclosure, because this dog was kept in the hospital. It was hooked up to IV fluids. We were doing everything that we could to treat it and save it, and obviously we had to clean its cage very regularly, as it was pretty much just living in there until it got better. But I remember seeing the doctor just completely suited up, gloved up, cleaning this enclosure. I was like, wow, what's going on here? Because I wasn't there when that patient was received into the hospital. And that's when she informed me of why the dog was there, what symptoms it was presenting, and what risk comes with that. So this was the point where I kind of learned a little more about leptovirus and what exactly it does to the animal's body and the human's body. I didn't realize the risk that it held against the kidneys and very vital organs. But this is why we push for our canine patients to get vaccinated not only with distemper, but lepto at the same time. So if you are exposed or in an area where leptovirus is potentially resting, it is very important to wear the proper footwear and the proper gloves, clothing, and use appropriate cleaning solutions to ensure that you are eliminating the bacteria that causes this virus and keeping yourself safe while doing so. So I had said that vaccinating your dogs with the distemper alongside the leptovirus is highly recommended and good to do. That is because unvaccinated dogs can be carriers of the leptovirus. So if they're not showing the symptoms yet, their urine can be holding it, and if you do come in contact with it, now you are infected with it. So vaccinating your pets is very important. It's not only important for their safety, but for yours as well. You don't realize how many things you could come in contact with and become infected with just from your household pet. Because if that pet enters the outside world and is exposed to wildlife that might be infected, then obviously now it has become a carrier of the infection as well. Another thing that I feel like a lot of people probably don't think about is collecting or purchasing used pet taxis or crates from garage sales, flea markets, wherever you may shop to get such items. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because certain diseases such as distemper can still be present on these crates or pet taxis or whatever if they have not been properly cleaned. So, with that being said, it is important to keep in mind that used pet carriers and crates can hold on to these diseases. And obviously, you want to have your animal vaccinated, but if your animal is not vaccinated, you don't want to expose it to these viruses and risk getting your beloved pet sick just because you got a good deal on this crate. If you purchase a secondhand or used crate, please keep in mind the risk and be sure to clean it thoroughly. Multiple ways to clean it. A quick Google search will recommend that if you have a used crate or if you have an area that was previously exposed to distemper and leptovirus and or that a recommended way to clean that is to first remove all the waste contents from the crate and then use a soap, like dish soap and water solution, and really scrub every nook and cranny of this infected area. Get in there and clean it very well. And then you will go back in again with a bleach solution. It recommends a 1 to 32 household bleach solution. So that is approximately half a cup of bleach to 1 gallon of water. And when you use this, you will want to spray it down, clean the whole area down with the solution, and give it at least a 10-minute wet period. So let that wet formula kind of rest on there for at least 10 minutes before you will go back in and rinse it off completely. Now, me personally, anytime I am deep cleaning something that I either know had a sick animal in or I'm suspicious of it previously housing a sick animal, I personally will just spray the absolute crap out of it with just plain bleach, because I want to make sure that my beloved pet I intend to put in there is not going to get sick. So think about all of that. When you see wildlife animals and you see that they are acting strange or different, know that distemper is a possibility. I know a lot of people go straight to rabies. Distemper kind of mimics rabies in a way, but in a lot of cases, it's actually distemper that you are witnessing rather than rabies. I know around here where I live, the primary carrier of rabies is bats. Most other animals that we see that are acting strange are actually just infected with distemper. But please note that the risk of catching distemper for our pets is very possible, just because many wildlife animals will pass through our yards. And it's as simple as coming in contact with the infected urine or feces or saliva. And I definitely notice my dogs very frequently going outside and just shoving their face straight into the ground and start licking whatever is there. So keeping your pets vaccinated, very important. Keeping an eye on your pets, very important. Make sure that they're not feasting on raccoon feces or what have you. Raccoons could actually spread so many things. Distemper is only one of many, many things that raccoons can give to our pets. But take care of them as well as yourselves, and keep in mind too, distemper primarily it's heaviest in the hot summer months. That's when it spreads most easily among the animals. Also during the mating season, the animals are coming more and more in contact with each other, and that contact is what will make it disperse and spread. So keep an eye on your pets, wash your hands, and be sure that if you are cleaning any area that may be exposed to infected urine or feces, to wear the proper gloves, clothing, shoes, everything to make sure that you are not getting infected. So this is what I have so far. I think this is awful cute. This is the first time I've ever done a vertebrae shark. I've seen a few of them done before, and I always thought that they were super cute. And this is my first attempt at doing it, and I think it turned out pretty nice. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope you guys learned something new today and know what precautionary steps you need to take to stay safe out there. Wild animals, they are cute, they are entertaining, but definitely be careful when you're around them. You never know what kind of diseases or viruses they may be carrying and what might affect you and make you sick. Obviously, we want to take care of ourselves. So if you see that cute cuddly raccoon out there, just keep your distance, admire it from a distance, and if it starts to run up on you, know that that could potentially be a sign of distemper. Like I said, they become very unfearful of humans when they are sick with distemper, so definitely watch out for that. But I hope you guys enjoyed today's topic, and I hope you enjoyed today's project. If you would like to see more like this, be sure to like and subscribe to my channel, and follow me on my Facebook and Instagram for special opportunities to claim pieces like this for your home. Thank you. See you guys next week. Bye.